Hi everyone, it's Kristen here. Today's tutorial is all about eyebrows. So as you can see, I've got quite sparse eyebrows. I did this to myself when I was in high school or in junior high. So don't over tweeze your eyebrows because now I'm stuck with thin sparse brows that I need to fill in every day. So what I'm going to do for you today is fill the way I do my brows every day. So a few things to take note of. My eyebrows are really thin and sparse, and so I do like a full application of brow color. Depending on your brow type, you might have full brows and you just need to fill in little, sparse areas or lengthen them or whatever. There are different brow types. So you might need to adjust to your specific brow. Choosing a color for your eyebrows doesn't have to be too difficult. I like to tell people that have blonde hair to go a little bit darker with their eyebrows, and then those with darker hair, you can match your hair color or go a little bit lighter. It depends on your natural brow color. I am definitely of the family of thought that I love having an ash tone in my brows. Most people do have kind of a grayish shade to their eyebrows, and so I like to work with that instead of against it. So I definitely prefer to have something that has a bit more gray brown in it than a red brown. However, there's an exception to that. If you do have really, really warm tones to your hair and your skin, then use something that has a bit more red in it. So let's get started with the brow application. The products that you'll need to have are your brow color. So I use a loose powder brow shade. This one is called Cliff. You'll need a brush, an angled liner brush like so, and something that's not frayed. My eyebrows, I want something that's really nice and compact and that the bristles aren't frayed. So to get started with my brow application, I take my brow powder, and again, this is a loose powder. I'll need to open the lid and make sure that there's some product in the cap, because that's where I take the product from. So I'll just flip it over, tap a little bit into the lid. Now I've got quite a bit to work with there. We have pressed powder brow colors as well. We just don't have one right now that's dark enough for my brow color, but I find that powder works really well to get a very natural shape to the brow. And you can get a really dramatic look if you want, or you can get a very natural look. So I take my brush, dip it into the powder, tap off the excess. With eyebrows, you do a little bit on one side and then you go to the other brow and you fill that same area in on the other brow. It's going back and forth constantly. You don't do one full eyebrow at a time. That's how you get symmetry. So I like to start about a quarter of the way into my brow and flick the brush in hair-like strokes. And then whatever is left on my brow, now that I've kind of filled that bottom part in, I go into the inner corner, fill that in as well. You don't like having this area too full because that looks very artificial. You want that to be soft. So I like to fill in the outer portion first, make it nice and dark, and then whatever's kind of left on my brush, that's what I apply to the inner corner. Constantly looking back and forth between your brows to make sure that you have symmetry. But don't worry about making it exactly the same because it's next to impossible and you'll never end up going anywhere if you're trying to make them exactly the same. So I always start with the bottom part of my brows, fill that in, kind of define the shape of the under part of the brow and then I'll go fill in sort of the middle, and then I'll finish it with the top of the brow. All right, so now that I've got the bottom part looking kind of funky, I'll just show you a guideline for shaping your brows and where they should start, arch, and stop. So to start your brow, you want to go straight up from either from the outer corner of your nostril or sort of this little dimple right here, straight up from there. That's where you want your brow to start. Where you want it to end is from your nostril to the outer corner of your eye, and that's where you can bring it till. An arch is from your nostril and then through your iris or your pupil. It depends, you know, it can kind of be a more narrow arch, that'd be through the pupil, or it'd be a little bit of a wider arch through the iris. So now I like to fill in the middle of the brow. I have a lot of sparseness right in the middle, so I'm going to just add a lot of color right in there. That's where I add sort of the most color because it's quite bald in some of those spots in there. Same thing on the other side, always going back and forth. Now I like to take whatever is left on my brush, not a lot, but whatever is kind of left on it, and I like to fill in the inner corners. So this time I like to sort of brush upwards, and I'm using the whole tip of the brush to do that. So instead of angling it like this, I'm actually using it like flat against my brows, if that makes sense. Hard to explain. So still in hair-like strokes, but using it flat against my brows instead of at an angle. This part really takes a bit of mastering. It won't come right away to get that inner part of the brow right away, especially if you have sparse ones like me. It'll take a little bit of time to master how much color to put in this inner corner and how to make it symmetrical. A lot of people also ask if the brow color stays on really well, and it does. It is amazing. But before it really sets, I like to kind of erase little bits with my finger. And then in a couple minutes, when it sort of dries, has a minute to set, then it will stay in place really well. Yeah, so that's looking pretty good in there. So now I need to do the top of my brow. So the arch and the end, kind of. So again, hair-like strokes, and now I'm going to apply the color downward. I like to apply the color whichever way the hair grows. So let's call this part the tail of the eyebrow. What I do for the end of my brow, this tail part, I don't like making it really fat. I do see some people doing that. If they like full brows, they make that tail end really fat, and I just find it looks so fake. So I like keeping this part a little bit skinnier because I feel like that looks more natural. Finding my arch here. Almost creating an arch. I don't have much of a natural arch. Then I like to look at the two sides, see if they're kind of sort of matching. Now let's go in and fill in the top of the brow. So these hairs kind of grow downward and at an angle. So that is the way that I am brushing the color in. You can round your arches, you can make them more pointed. I don't make them too sharp or too rounded. Mine are sort of in between. They will look slightly different every day. And brows take a while to master, so give yourself time. Now is a great time to practice your eyebrow application. And then you just go over it to make sure you're happy with the symmetry and the fullness, and if there's any little bits that need to be adjusted. But don't spend too much time, you know, you're gonna notice the most if they're a little bit off. A little bit. If they're a lot off, then people will notice. But if they're a little bit off, it's probably just you that's gonna see. So that is how I fill in my eyebrows. So thanks for watching and give it a try.